Okay, I think everything's up and going. I gotta do a couple more settings here, but if folks can let me know in the live chat if they can see and hear me okay, that would be great. I'm trying to get the closed captions up and running. Let's see. Three ring circus. Let's make sure. Let me do one thing at a time. Oh boy. Nope. Hang with me here, team. I've got something going on that's not quite right. So on the live chat, is everyone seeing me okay and hearing me okay? I see people chiming in. Okay, I think I just found the problem. There we go. Okay. Did everything look good on your end, folks? Yeah, I'm getting some 5x5s. That's great. I'll try to get to some shout outs here in a second, folks. But I am trying my darndest to get the closed captions up as well. It's different than, well, Susan, if you're on there, and I know you are, it's a little different because I started everything off OBS Studio, and it doesn't give me the same options as starting it from, excuse me, from YouTube. So I'm trying to go in the back door into YouTube to get that up and running. So let me try one more thing here. So apologize for the downtime here, but entertain yourselves on the live chat. Enjoy a nice view of Iceland a little bit ago. And let's see. Nope. Let's try this. Okay, where's the caption thing? Copyright. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to work, Susan, so I apologize to those that want these. They obviously the captions do show up after the fact. Yeah, I did try putting them up before I started too, Susan. There just wasn't. We might not succeed this time. We'll have to try again next time if it doesn't work out. So, all right. Apologies there. So let me kill that, and let's make sure everything's good to go still. Amanda Joe, are you still getting the feedback, or is it gone now? Maybe just send me a message. I can't hear you on there because I muted you. So, but we'll go ahead and give folks a few minutes of shout outs. Oh, she says there's still feedback. Is anyone else hearing feedback? Amanda Joe, your feedback might just be because I've got you also on Zoom. So that might be it. So apologize for that. But it looks like we are coming in loud and clear for all the viewers. So that's great. We'll get started here in about 5 minutes, team. Thanks again for putting up with some of the technical things. The interview live streams, a little bit new still. We've only done the one with Nick Zentner, and this is our second one. And you're dealing with a technological neophyte, and so I'm just trying to figure out all of this new learning as best I can. So, okay, so we've got folks from all sorts of places. Greg in Alberta, Darren in Kansas. And thanks as always to our moderators who are on here. Susan Helmer, I think I saw Lisa R on here. And of course, Mandy Jo, who will be a guest on our program here in a bit. Looking forward to that. We've got Roger from Norway, Mary from Central Texas, folks from all over the place. I might not have time for as many shout outs as I normally do, but you guys can see them. They're right there, whether I read them or not. Good stuff. Lisa R from New Zealand, where it's morning. Char from Western Pennsylvania. All sorts of good stuff happening. Excellent. Patsy from Michigan. I'll just grab a few, I suppose, while we're waiting for these last couple minutes. Super from Norway. And Les from San Antonio. Tamara from the UK. Hope you guys are having good weather. This is not the current weather in Iceland. I just went back a few hours to catch some nice blue skies. We can catch this up to the twilight hours, I suppose, and give you a more realistic view of current Iceland conditions. Krogatho from Sweden. It's their birthday today. Awesome. And your family bought you the Encyclopedia of Volcanoes? What a great gift. What a great birthday gift. Oh, let's see if I can get mine over here. There it is. A beefy book for sure. How many pages is this? Oh boy. 1,400 plus pages. 1,418 pages? No more. Anyway, it's a lot of pages. That's a great gift. So I'm glad your family got that for you. And you've got some fun reading to do. If you're like me, there's just people ask me, like, what do you read for pleasure? And I'm like, textbooks, journal articles. I wish I had time to read for pleasure and for my profession, but I find joy in reading geology articles, so I stick with that. So I'm glad I caught that on the live chat. That's great. Happy birthday again. Jean Patrick from Munich, Germany. Shauna from Sydney. Alexandra from Hamburg, Germany. JS from Central Illinois. Nancy, Pittsburgh. Megan's in Salt Lake City. Nono from Italy. All sorts of great folks here. Sandra from Switzerland. Greg from East Carolina. Thank you all for joining us. Excellent. Looks like things were coming in good. Polly Chanel from France. Hopefully I'm saying these right. Hej from Greenland. Wow, that's awesome. I would love to go to Greenland someday. That's high on my list. Pam from Bitterroot, Montana. Janet from Devon, UK. Francis is enjoying spring break in Terrell, Texas. Hope the weather's good for you down there. Sanella from Slovakia. Everyone says the sound is good. Okay, good. Yeah, it sounds like we're good with the audio. Linda from Alaska. Margaret from New Zealand. Laura from England. Great news all around. Yeah, I'm skipping a lot of the shout outs I normally like to do. We're trying to get things up and running with trying to get the closed captions on. We will continue to try to effort that, so I do apologize. We want to make these programs as accessible as we can to everyone. I know those who maybe have English as a second language probably also appreciate having the captions there. I thought that the only way to get the captions up on the live stream was you had to wait for the YouTube program to add those on the recording a day or so later, but it seems as though there's a way to get those on sooner while it's happening live. So we're trying to figure out how to make that happen. So good stuff. Yeah, as you're jumping in here, friends, if you could please give the channel the like and do all those awesome algorithm things. Those are always much appreciated. So thanks again. I see that it is 2 p.m. here, Mountain Daylight Time, top of the hour. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining me. I am Geology Professor Shawn Willsey. Welcome to a special live stream update. We are going to be looking at what's been happening in Iceland. Today is Wednesday, March 13th. Again, 2 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 8 p.m. in Iceland. And we will not only be looking at some of the latest events and happenings in Iceland. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on a paper, but I did find just a little bit, I have a little lesson, a little bit of geology I want to share with you. And then we'll spend a good chunk of our time with our friend and moderator, Amanda Jo, who is also a resident of Grindavik. She still owns property there. And so we want to talk to her about just living there, some of the things that transpired this last fall, and just kind of the current state of affairs as best we can. So appreciate her being here both as a moderator and as a special guest. Quick programming note, I will be in Europe on March 20th to the 30th. We're going with some friends to Vienna for a few days, Prague, and then coming back through New York. We're spending a couple days there. I am not a big city person. This is not a trip I would have planned, but my wife goes on plenty of the other types of trips with me where we're looking at rocks and doing other sorts of things. So nonetheless, I'm still pretty excited. It'll be a new experience in a new country, and I can hang out and do the city thing as well as anyone for a few days. So I'm excited to go to those places. I do have a couple of stops that I plan to make in Prague for sure, and maybe Vienna. So I'm hoping that there's some road cuts. I'm hoping there's some rocks and geology to look at, and I'll bring my camera, record what I can, and then share that with you in the coming weeks. While I'm gone, I'll be sure to upload a few other videos as well that you can enjoy, including a new random road cut episode. I know those that love that series will have that on. And so that'll be fun. And then I'll also bring my laptop for the trip, and if there's any sort of significant activity in Iceland or elsewhere, I will do my darndest to jump on and do some sort of update, whether that's recorded or possibly a live stream. So just a quick little note there about what's been going on. So, okay, so let's jump into our update on what's been happening in Iceland over the past few, I guess, days. I guess our last live stream event was this past Saturday, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Saturday was our last live stream. Obviously no eruption in that time, but let's go to the Met Office update. They have an update that is valid for, came out yesterday evening, I believe. So continued increased likelihood of an eruption, likely sequence of events over the next several days. And so the volume of magma continues to increase, which could result in a new intrusion or possibly an eruption. Eruption could be with very little notice, possibly less than 30 minutes, and the eruption site is in the same likely location we've been looking at over the past few weeks between the hills Stora Stogafeld to the north and a little bit further to the south, Hagafeld. In other words, a bit east and maybe southeast of the power plant on the other side of the road. Model calculations show that the magma accumulation at Svartsengi continues at a steady rate. In previous events, the magma intrusion formed when the volume of magma reached 8 to 13 million cubic meters. Total volume accumulated now has reached this threshold. So we're within this window based on what we've seen in the past. Pressure buildup therefore continues to increase in the magma chamber, and likelihood of a new dike intrusion and even an eruption in the next days is increased. Okay, so that's probably stuff you already knew coming into it, but just reiterating what the Met Office had to say there. Let's see, 140 earthquakes have been detected in the vicinity of the Sunnukr crater and Grindavik since Friday. The majority of these earthquakes have been minor or below magnitude 1, while the largest one was a magnitude 2.8 on Friday evening. We discussed that earthquake a little bit on my Saturday live stream. Seismic activities increased slightly in the past few days compared to last week, which is possibly due to just some of the calmer weather conditions. So remember, a few days ago they had some really windy conditions, ripping weather, and now things have calmed down quite a bit. So that may explain the uptick in the seismic activity. And then this graphic here, so not a huge lot of information from the Met Office, but they did update this graphic that we've been looking at as well. So remember that this shows the Let's make that a little bit smaller perhaps, and then make it a little bit bigger this way. There we go. So this shows sorry, I was reading a quick text there from Amanda Joe. This shows in the blue line, that would be the uplift and inflation and the increased magma volume over time leading up to the December 18th eruption. That was the first one that we had in this area. Then the next one chronologically would be, let's see, the green one. Oh, let's go backwards in time. Sorry. So the purple one's actually the first one. That's the intrusion of magma that was accompanied with a flurry of earthquakes on November 10th. Sorry. Then the blue one leading up to the December 18th eruption. Then we have the green line, which culminated in the January 14th eruption. That was the eruption that was closest to Grindavik and destroyed 3 homes. Yellow line is the inflation and magma volume increase over time leading up to the February 8th eruption. And now we've got this squirrely little red line here, which was behaving really well. In fact, it was almost perfectly mirroring the last eruptive event in February. And then we have this obvious deviation here. So last Saturday, or excuse me, 2 Saturdays ago, March 2nd, is when we had the magma, some of the magma left the subsurface reservoir, injected into fractures off to the east, but did not culminate in eruptions. We had another intrusion event there. And since that time, we've had a good, 7, 8, 9, 10 days since then, and the magma volume has increased. And now we're pretty much at, or maybe a little bit beyond, what was the magma volume for the February 8th intrusion event. So really interesting sequence here. And I think, and I'll make this point again later, I think we're in a bit of, we're in a new regime, I think, with this system. I think we're in a little bit of no man's land. We haven't been here. It feels like we've been here before, but I might make an argument that we really haven't, that some things have happened in the subsurface to drastically change the architecture of the system, and the pattern of behavior that we saw with these last 3 eruptive events might not totally fit anymore. So we might not be seeing these as good indicators of possible future outcomes for this situation. Okay, so that's from the Met Office. They just updated the graph here. Let's look now at, and so again, I just want to point out, that the total volume is a little bit past. We're past, or just at, or past, I think, this 10 million cubic meter number for the total volume of magma that's erupted. I think the last thing I saw was around 10.5, so that's exceeded the volume that was necessary for this February 8th eruption, but still much less than the amount of volume that was in the system when we had these 2 eruptions in January and in December. So I'll come back to this. I have more to say about some of this here in a bit. Let's look at the earthquakes. So the earthquakes over the last 24 hours, we have seen a few earthquakes, nothing hugely remarkable, and definitely nothing indicative of magma ascent. So there's nothing I'm seeing here that is even suggestive of magma moving towards the surface as a possible precursor to an eruption. There was looks like a 2.1 earlier today, a little bit before noon in Iceland time, at a depth of 5 kilometers. So that's just down in that zone where we've been seeing a lot of these earthquakes. A couple shallower ones, but very small, but generally just nothing huge and out of the blue, I'd say, and very few earthquakes. And we may be seeing again this uptick in the data just due to the improved weather. If we look at we just take the last 6 hours or so, it's completely quiet. Now there's a new feature on this website that we've been using to track earthquakes, and apparently it's caused a little bit of I don't know what the right word is, turmoil or confusion among many people. So previously this is what we would see, that the lowest limit earthquakes all started at 0, and we could see anything above 0. Oh, here's the first light turning off for those of you that like the comic relief. So yeah, previously we just had earthquakes from 0 and above, and then we could, of course, come in here and select, above magnitude 2 or whatever we want there. But for reasons I don't understand, because I don't know exactly how this is all set up, but now you can go to all when you select your earthquake magnitude. And what that does is it brings in all earthquakes regardless of magnitude. And if you look over here on the list, you will see that there are frequent earthquakes every now and again that have a magnitude that is a negative value. And so I've fielded a few inquiries, and I've seen on some of the different chats and forums out there some question and confusion about how you can have negative value earthquakes. So I am about to address that right now and hopefully explain it in a way that makes sense and makes you satisfied. So recognize that our ability to measure earthquake magnitude is using a scale or a system that I think was invented in the 1930s by Charles Richter. You've probably heard of the Richter scale. There's been a few tweaks to it over the years. We now use something generally for most applications called the moment magnitude scale, which is a little bit better way of addressing the true magnitude or energy release of an earthquake. But nonetheless, it's based on the original premise and the original system that he put into place. So how can we have a negative magnitude earthquake? Well, I found a very fun graphic here from the Seismology Research Center that I think will help explain this a little bit. Let me make it a little bit bigger. That's probably good there. And explain this as best I can. Here we go. I don't know why it was cutting off part of the, sorry there, team. Okay, so this is called a nomogram, and this is basically how we determine the magnitude of an earthquake. So remember, the magnitude scale, the Richter scale, is just, it's like any scale that you set into place. It's somewhat arbitrary. You have to define what the reference points are, what you're measuring. And so what the Richter scale is based on is it's based on really 2 data points you can measure. And then as you line up those 2 data points across this nomogram, that determines the magnitude of the quake. So what we can measure is the distance from any given location to the earthquake's epicenter. So that can be determined from a seismogram by looking at the time difference between those 2 first sets of waves that arrive. So those are called the P waves and the S waves, the primary and secondary waves. And if some of this is things you aren't familiar with, we can do a deeper dive at some other point, or you can jump on the trusty old internet and maybe do some sleuthing on your own. So in this case, let's say that your location or the location of a seismograph station is 100 kilometers from the earthquake's location. Then what we would do then is look at that seismograph and then look to see let's see, someone just said, my browser window is not centered. Oh yeah, I just fixed that, so hopefully it's good now. Anyway, so you can see the 100 kilometers here. And then the other thing we could do is measure the actual amplitude of that seismograph. So if you've seen a seismograph before, there's a little line that goes up and down, kind of reminds you of like a cardiogram or some other, something you might see at the doctor's office where it's like your pulse or your heartbeat. And so we can measure the amplitude of that. So as we match up the amplitude of the ground motion, the biggest wave that went up and down on the seismograph, and the distance from the seismograph station to the earthquake's location, that crosses this nomogram here in the middle and gives us a magnitude. And so the 1 is just it's just a starting point. There's nothing, this is a logarithmic scale, so there's nothing special about any one of these units per se. And so you can see that you can have more negative values. Of course, when this system was in place in the 30s, and here it is 1935-ish, I guess, in California, the seismograph or the seismometers that were used to measure seismic energy were, compared to today's machines and instruments, very primitive. And so now we have much more sensitive instruments that can measure the magnitude of the earthquakes, better sensitivity. And so this magnitude 1 there's nothing special about it. It's just an arbitrary point in time. And so as our ability to detect smaller and smaller ground motions, smaller amplitudes, has improved, that means you can have detected earthquakes that go below zero into these negative values here. Obviously, these earthquakes of this size are incredibly small. They're not felt by humans, but they can be detected by these very sensitive instruments. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully I did a pretty good job there explaining that the starting point, if you will, of 0 or 1 on the magnitude scale is completely arbitrary. Even though this nomogram shows it going from -2 to 9, it truly has no upper limit and no lower limit. So really, if we could detect things down to like nanoparticle motions, then this thing could go much smaller in terms of negative values. So even though it doesn't have an upper lower limit, there is a practical value in terms of the upper limit of earthquake magnitudes. Obviously, rocks can only store so much stress before they break, before they release seismic energy. And that's around 9.5-ish or so on this magnitude scale. I think I've read somewhere, so someone can check me if this is right. It's actually impossible to generate like a magnitude 10 earthquake on planet Earth through tectonic processes and all the things that generate earthquakes, because you couldn't even store that much stress and produce that much faulting and offset with the rocks on our planet. The only way you might get an earthquake of that magnitude would be if you had like a huge meteor fall out of space and hit the Earth. Then that would send much more energy reverberating through the planet and would be a much larger magnitude quake. But in terms of just everyday earthquakes generated here on Earth, you couldn't get something quite that big. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps explain the reason why we have these negative values on the recording stations here for these earthquake magnitudes. So these are just very tiny earthquakes. They're really no more or less, I suppose, helpful, as far as I know. Excuse me. Quick sip of water. No more or less helpful when it comes to volcano monitoring than other quakes. So hopefully that's helpful. So again, just because we're seeing a few dots here, what we would want to see if there was going to be an eruption would be much more dense clustering. I would not even call this much in the way of clustering. This is sort of, it's not quite random, but it's not the density, it's not the number of earthquakes I would expect to see from a magma pushing upwards leading to an eruptive event. So nothing what we're seeing right now is suggestive. Even when we pull in these negative value magnitude earthquakes, nothing is suggestive of magma migration towards the surface. Some of the magma might be laterally moving out and slowly maybe and breaking rock a little bit as it does so. But nothing here suggests that the magma is ascending towards the surface. So, okay. So, and I'll put a link to this handy dandy little graphic here. It's nicely explained here. You can read it just as well as I can. But the Seismology Research Center does a great job. And I think this is out of Australia. So good day on that one. Excellent work. Okay, let's look at the GPS data for a second here as well. We'll go through a couple of the normal stations, but all the GPS measurements tend to show, here's our Svartsengi one, that fairly steady uplift. So even though we had a few windy days, we still have those data points there, and it looks like it may not be as rapid as what we've seen in the past, but it looks like uplift at this station does seem to continue a little bit. There is a little bit of a downtick here on this last data point at Svartsengi, but one data point by itself does not constitute a trend. And so we'll see where that lands in the next few days with more data here. But you can see that fairly steady upward movement of the GPS station, which we think is due to inflation. So more magma is being pumped into this 5-kilometer deep magma body, and as more magma is pumped into the system, that occupies more volume, and that results in a commensurate rise in the elevation of of the land there. So there's our Svartsengi station. Let's maybe look at a couple more. The Blue Lagoon station here, similar trend, right? So everything since the February 8th eruptive event, nothing really anomalous here in the east-west or north-south trends. But a viewer did mention to me in an email I got earlier today that there is one little difference here, and that's this station here, the Grindavik station, GRIV, and let me show you on Google Earth where that is. So I've got the different stations plotted up here. Let's add the roads. Let's take those out. So this should look familiar to folks. And so we have a station at the top of Thorpur here, and then at the southwest end of this this hill is another station, GRIV. So that's the station we're going to look at next. And if you look at this station, there's two little interesting blips in the data. One is up here with the northward trend. There's a little bit of a downturn here, and this is just for today. So the station moved slightly, and I do mean slightly when we look at the numbers here. So that's 70 millimeters of movement. So we're literally looking at, maybe a couple millimeters or so of southward motion. Again, one data point does not constitute a trend, so probably not hugely indicative. No real change in the east-west plot, but then when we look at the up-down plot for this specific station, there is a fairly pronounced upturn with the last data point. So you can see it steadily rising, kind of stalls here. This is a bit crazy here. I don't know if that's due to the weather or if that's real, but then the next one we get is up here. So it could have been that the trend continued, but the weather disrupted these measurements. Not sure, but an interesting one to watch. So that will be another station that I'll probably keep an eye on in the next couple of days if we don't have an eruption. So what's our big takeaway here in looking at all the data? What are some of our interpretations? Well, I'll share mine with you. I think we're at an interesting point, and I guess maybe the thing to go back to is this here from the Met Office. How do I frame this? I think the big takeaway is what happened on March 2nd, which was magma leaving the reservoir, the subsurface system, moving off to the east, and then filling in some presumably dead-end fracture system that did not have a connection to the surface, and or possibly due to that magma not having the pressure and the gas content to actually break the rock to make it to the surface. I wonder, and I'm just thinking out loud here in front of a few of my favorite friends, if that event maybe changed in some way the whole pathway architecture system in the subsurface. Are we looking now at a very different plumbing system that the magma has to move through? That it was moving through the system in a pretty predictable way since December with these last three eruptions. We assumed it was going to follow a similar pattern of behavior going into this most recent event. And now that magma's injected itself into some fracture system or some zone of permeability, some open space, now we might be seeing some new trend. So I just wonder if the pattern we've been watching before March 2nd is very likely no longer valid, and that we have to see what happens next. I guess we really have no guide going forward, perhaps, right? There may be using this trend, and it was a kind of a lousy trend. It's only based on these 3 data points, but it's all we had to go on, to be honest. But predicting or forecasting eruptions based on this magical 9 million cubic meters to 15 cubic, however many cubic meters of magma. Who knows? This thing could go on for a while. We could continue to see inflation and see this red line trend upwards. We're already past the 30-day mark since the last event on February 8th, and this could continue possibly for more weeks to come, and maybe either end in another intrusion event, or maybe end in an eruption. I certainly don't have the answers. I'm just asking the questions. But I just don't think we can hold too firmly to what this volcanic system was doing over the last few months and expect the same out of what's happening now. I think we've got a lot of things that have changed in the subsurface, and unfortunately that's an area we just don't have a lot of good data for. We don't have, cameras moving through tiny cracks in the rock 5 kilometers down to show us the pathways and the interconnectedness that the magma has to move through. Let's also remember too that this is magma. This is not water or fluid medium. It is sticky. It is dense. And as that magma that has been intruded down there on March 2nd, as it starts to cool and you sit in between molten magma and solid rock, that material is actually sometimes harder to break through and do anything with because it's not cooled off to the point that it's brittle and can be fractured and broken. And it's not fluid enough to flow easily. So it's this sticky, viscous material that probably inhibits more batches of magma from moving through the system and may also somewhat inhibit earthquakes being generated as well, just because of its interesting characteristics, I suppose. So, okay, I think that's what I wanted to share. Hopefully that makes sense. So, I know everyone's sort of waiting. What's this going to do? What's happening? Where's this going to go? I certainly have no clue. We can all throw predictions against the wall and see what happens here. But rather than treating it as something we should be setting our clocks to and waiting for the next, the orange stuff to come out of the ground and dazzle our senses, I'm really intrigued and interested to see what happens moving forward and just enjoying the process, just enjoying each day, looking at the data, what can we infer, and then seeing what this outcome is, if it has an outcome, and then learning from it. So let's just maybe treat it more as like a learning process and possibly learning a new chapter or a new phase of this volcanic system's story or history, rather than just waiting for the satisfying end result, which is usually an eruption or something like that. Yeah, who knows? Hopefully that made sense. I felt like I rambled a bit there. So what else do I have? Oh, one last thing I had in here, actually two more things, then we'll turn to Amanda Jo. I have an article that I think it's a little bit different take on things, but this is our good friend, Professor Thordarson. So this is an article where he is quoted, and I'll just read you a few of his quotes here and see if you agree or disagree. Quote, "My feeling is that it could go either way in terms of eruption or not eruption, but the longer it goes on, the less likely it is to erupt." That's what he said. He also says, "It has reached the tolerance limit for what the system has had up to now. And if something doesn't happen in the next 2 to 3 days, I think the chances of an eruption will be reduced." So that's interesting. He thinks that every day that goes by without it erupting means that maybe it's not going to erupt. And again, I wish I was, there for this interview because I'd, of course, ask some follow-up questions to that. But let's see what else we can glean from this article. Thorder says that if the magma doesn't go up the usual way it took, meaning up through the Sunukur crater series, it is possible that it will enter another blind crack like it did on March 2nd. And that would be like what I've called these sort of dead-end fracture systems that just don't have connections to the surface. They're not interconnected with a lot of other pathways. He says, when the magma failed to break its way to the surface on March 2nd, one began to suspect that this main path that the magma was ascending on December 18th, February 18th, and possibly partially on January 14th, had filled in a fissure system that were the most open. So that's interesting. That maybe that we've taken those prior eruptions took advantage of those pathways, and maybe those aren't available for the magma to follow anymore. Last little part of his interview here, this article, he says that now there are less open cracks, and the magma in them may have become so stiff that it's difficult to get through it. And I think this is going into what I was talking about a little bit, that you have this spectrum from solidified rock, cooled and hardened, but brittle when it's stressed, and at the other end you have molten magma. This is his quote again. There may have been just over 10 million cubic meters of magma, and if it goes well, over 13 million cubic meters, which has been the most. I would interpret that as a sign of inertia in the adaptation system that has been letting the magma to the surface. So I think a little bit of language translation there. Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but let's see. He says that while the magma is in the temperature range between the melting point and the freezing point, it is by far the strongest. And that's what I was saying, that you've got magma that's not completely solidified, but it's not very mobile and fluid, and that makes it, in some respects, what he says, the strongest, or in other words, it's not going to flow. It's too sticky and set up to flow, yet it's not cooled enough and solidified enough for it to be broken and fractured by stress. And then his last little quote here: if a new magma tries to ascend the same path, this structure can hold it back. Then she tries to look for something else if there are no other possible ways there in the Sunuka area. Yeah, so basically this sticky magma that's slowly solidifying becomes immobile, but yet unbreakable in the sense that it can't be broken easily by typical stress conditions that fracture rock. And so if it's impeding the pathway along some fracture system, then everything kind of gets backed up a little bit. And I think everything he says there I would agree with for the most part, although I'd ask some follow-up questions. But I think there's some good perspectives there for sure. And then finally, I wanted to touch on briefly, before we get to Amanda Joe, let me find my graphic here. So some of you might remember this from many months ago. And this, among other diagrams, was my very simplistic and very very rough sketch of what might be happening in the subsurface. And if you've ever seen anyone draw these sills, and probably the picture in your head is something like this, right? I even gave mine a little flare, just, these little kind of lobes that come off of it. But basically I drew just this big horizontally oriented jelly layer in the sandwich, if you will, right? And then at this point, whatever date this was from, we were talking about that maybe there'd been some, after the December 18th eruption, maybe this magma was starting to crystallize here. The point of me showing this is to show the very simplified geometries that I and others draw these sills. And what I want to do now is maybe show you some diagram, or a diagram from a chapter of a book that I just ordered. So I have another big fat textbook coming my way soon, but I found this literally today as I was looking for, I'm like, there's got to be a better diagram that shows, because I knew when I drew this, I'm like, this is not the realistic view of what a sill looks like. But I didn't want to take the time to draw something intricate and detailed, even though it would be more accurate, because it was going to take too much time to draw. And I was just trying to sketch something out quite quickly. So let's put a big X in my drawing there in terms of accurately showing this sill. Because what you can see here is I've got this sill showing, some amount of thickness, like it's a big pancake or sandwich layer of magma in the subsurface. And that's just not quite accurate. So a better view of these things, and this is from a chapter in this book that I just ordered. So the chapter is called Storage and Transport of Magma in the Layered Crust, Formation of Sills and Related Flat-Lying Intrusions. And this is from a book, let me zoom in a little bit there, you guys can see a little bit better, called Volcanic and Igneous Plumbing Systems. So there you go. I ordered a volcano plumbing textbook to spend some of my time with. But they did have a nice diagram in here of different sill geometries, and the one I really want to focus on here is this one on the right, because that's really a better depiction of likely what's sitting underneath this area north of Grindavik in Iceland. So notice we have maybe, and I would even, they're showing, and I would dispute this a little bit, but potentially these kind of big ovals at the bottom and the top. I want you to kind of ignore those and mainly focus on the detailed view in the middle here. Let's how big can I make this thing? Now I'm in the way, so I got to move it up a little bit. There we go. So all these thin bodies where the magma is occupying, and they're irregularly kind of distributed and spaced out, but they're interconnected. They show sort of one common conduit that connects them all. That's probably highly simplified as well. Again, they say it's a schematic drawing, but this is probably a much better view or rendition than what I drew, and so I wanted to just show this. So as we consider what I've been calling the magma reservoir, the magma body, others call it a sill, magma chamber, whatever you want to call it, in reality, we have magma that's moved up from the subsurface, has infiltrated and injected along probably mostly horizontal pathways, because that's the layering in the rock. You have a lava flow, then you have maybe some hyaloclastite, then you have a couple lava flows. So it's finding those permeable zones between those layered rocks on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and it's injecting magma into those zones. Then the other thing I would add to this, if I was going to run with this, and I might have Chelsea or something maybe make a better version of this at some point, is add some fractures that go up and down, right? Some dikes that interconnect these and actually connect these sills. Not all of them. Some of these might be sitting out here by themselves, but for the most part, these should be pretty interconnected. And that's probably a better view or image to put into your brain about how these lights just went off, turn on. There we go. How these sills actually look. And how do we know this? You might be like, well, dude, there's no way to see down there. How do we know that their geometries resemble something like this? How do we know that, they're actually composed of these, several thin yet mostly interconnected bodies of magma that are injected into whatever surrounding rocks lie in this region? And what this paper goes into, and I think I just found another paper too, but I think, is it this one or the other one I was looking at? It might be the other one. Oh, what we can see is there's places where these are exposed, right? So they're using outcrops. There's places where older sills have been completely exposed, and we can look at these geometries. So while we can't look at a sill, I don't know if there's any other good outcrop photos in here. So while we can't see these sills underground now in terms of like what they look like today, we can, sorry, I'm making you guys a little seasick here. We can take older magma bodies that have been cut open and exposed, uplifted, and look at how those, now they're cooled, of course, they're not magma, but how those igneous rocks then, their geometries lay out with respect to the surrounding rocks. So hopefully I explained that well also. Just a better way to consider these sills, I think, is this sort of model here, better than anything else I saw. And that was the best one I could find in a few minutes search on the internet. I was just looking for some images, cross-sections of some sills that showed more of a realistic geometry and interconnectedness than what I had drawn or what others typically draw. So I think that's it. So I'm gonna digest that chapter here in the coming days, along with a paper about sills, sill emplacements in, I think this is in, where's it at? Argentina? Yeah, this place in Argentina, and it's very outcrop driven and field based driven. So I'm interested to see that. So cool stuff. I think we will get to your questions here at the end, but I think I want to just continue with our program for now and bring in our guest, our moderator, our MVP, Amanda Jo. So give me just a second here, team, because I got to do a couple gee whiz things here on the computer to set this up. Where's my little notes? I left myself a note so I wouldn't screw this up. And now I've misplaced it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So that's the end of our Iceland update. Hopefully there was some good information for you there. We'll see where this goes. Selfishly, I would like this thing to either A, erupt in the next couple days. Friday or Saturday would be best for me. So volcano gods, if you're listening, there's my order. Have a brief 24-hour eruption like we saw in February, and then go back to inflating very slowly the magma body while I go to Europe for 10 days. Or B, keep doing what you're doing. Don't erupt until I get back from Europe, and then you can do what you want to. So the volcano doesn't care what I think, but if I did have a say in the matter, and of course I don't, that would be my vote. So let me figure out how to bring Amanda in. She's waiting over here in Zoom. I need to add a couple things here though. I need to turn on her mic. And I need to start the virtual camera. Okay, let's see if this works here, team. A wing and a prayer. Hang with me while we see what we can do here. So let's see, turn off. Oh, I need to go, okay, I gotta do one more thing here. Hold on. We're one step away. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. Let's see if I minimize that. Oh, let's put that back up for a second. She and I went through this yesterday and I had it figured out, and now oh, here we go. Okay, sweet. Okay. Let's see. Amanda Joe, you're on the big screen now, I think. So hopefully this is working. Let me make me bigger. And okay. So go ahead and unmute Amanda Joe. Go ahead and talk. Let me see if I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Oh. Okay, hold on.
Which is fine.
I've just turned on your mic now. People say they can't see you. They only see me.
Yep. What I got.
Okay. Well, that's no good because we don't want to just see me.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I bet. No, we need to get you on there. Let me see if I can figure this out. There's me small. Okay, so I just need to figure out how to put... Let's try this again. Let's try... Oh, here we go. I think I've got it. Well, no, I don't got it. Let's see, I turned that on, turn on the webcam, turn off display capture. Can folks hear Amanda Joe? Go ahead and say something now.
Hi? I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Well, just as long as you guys
That's
can
awkward.
hear her. No, that's okay. I'm trying
My
to
camera's on.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out... Do I want to... No, I don't want to share screen. OBS virtual camera. Oh, she was behind my screen? Someone says I had you for a second, so I'm not sure what I did. So if anyone can help me with this technological nightmare of mine, I think we have the audio working fine. I am running Zoom through my OBS studio, and I am trying my darndest to get her face and my face on the same screen. So if anyone has a good idea, I'll keep trying to get this going here. Well, let's try it. Let's see what. No, the share screen's not going to work. Shoot, what did I do yesterday?
I'd like to tell you I remember, but I don't.
No, you're fine. Let's see. Oh, when I shared my desktop, that's when you guys saw her for a second. Let's try that then. Let's see. Oh, this might work then. Did that work?
No, you're screen sharing with me, my dear.
Oh, I'm screen sharing with you. Okay, that's not what I want to do. Darn. Display.
What if you do the screen sharing like you're
Oh
normally
wait,
doing when you
I think I've
get
got it.
stuff and then
Okay, I think. Hold on. Whoa, now there's like.
like
Yeah, now I'm everywhere. Wait, what if we do this? Yeah, that's not gonna work because it's like mirroring it. Okay, so now we're back to just me.
Sean, what if whenever you share your desktop screen to show like articles and stuff, what if you just put the Zoom big like that and share it?
Okay, so yes, that's a good idea. Um, so if I have, no, that's not going to work. What are you seeing now? Just still me?
Yeah.
Okay. You need a new window capture in OBS, which captures the zoom window and can crop it down to only a manda portion of the window. I need a new window capture? Oh, okay. Maybe this will work. Properties for window capture. Now what are you seeing?
Just you.
Just me still? Darn it. Oh, put myself on the other side. Maybe that will work. Did that change anything? Or did I just switch sides with us? Oh, hold on. Oh no, that does the whole crazy thing. What about this thing? I don't know what I'm doing here, team. This is just not turning out great.
Sort of.
What happened there? Do you see yourself at all anywhere in there? No?
I just see a white screen now
Oh, you see a white screen now.
overlaying you.
Okay. Yeah, I tried some little window capture thing, but I'm not sure that's it.
Yeah, just do screen share of your screen with the Zoom on it.
So screen share on Zoom.
Yeah, like when you do screen share and show your desktop and the articles and everything, just do that with the Zoom screen instead of.
Okay. Well, yeah, because there's screen share. Right. But when I'm doing that off OBS, I'm just showing one thing. Let's try. Sorry here, folks. what about... Gosh, it's working so perfectly on my screen. I can see you, and there I am. And I know
Yeah,
it's
it's in the Zoom screen, it's fine.
right. So why is it not capturing? Because when I do display capture, we get the infinity thing, which I don't know. Can I cover? Does it? How does that look? Do you see just me and you now?
I see me and you on the Zoom.
What do you see on the YouTube?
I need to find that page again. That there you go.
Are we
Whatever
there?
you've done, just whatever you've done, it kind of works.
Yeah, I think it's not optimal. Like my little square is bigger than your square, whatever. But
Yeah, and
I
I think I'm delayed because I can see where I was typing and stuff.
yeah. Is it showing the live chat or is it just showing us?
Mm, I see the live chat on the side of the
Okay. All right.
YouTube.
Everyone's saying good things. So woohoo!
Yay,
This,
success.
this is yeah. This is not optimal, but it works. So all right. Sorry for the 5 minute. That was intermission. So hopefully people went to the bathroom. So awesome. We did figure out how to make it work. And just so I know what I did there, yeah, I turned on the display capture and then I just pulled my head. I'm basically, my head's covering all the little multiple pictures of you, but it's working. So, okay, I think I'm ready to begin. So, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for indulging us in that crazy little 5 minutes of chaos. Of course, our big guest for today is Amanda Jo Wood. Um, I don't even know exactly. She and I were trying to remember, and she might remember better than I will, how we actually met. I, of course, was starting to do these Iceland updates in early November, leading up to like the big day, November 10th. And I think it might have been in there, maybe it was a little bit later when she reached out to me and let me know that she was from Grindavik and had all this information she kept sharing with me. And do you remember exactly how, if that
I
sounds
think
about
you
right?
I think you asked me a question through the one Facebook group, the geology group we're
Is
in.
that where it was? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just kind of all snowballed.
Yeah. Anyway, she's just been super awesome, as you guys all know, with just assisting me with the news from Iceland, getting me information that either I probably either couldn't find or would take a long time to get to. So I just want to just just thank her once again for all the assistance she's provided. Amanda Jo is a oh, and there's her kitty, one of many, one of three, right? Oh, you just muted yourself, so or the kitty pushed mute or something. There
Yeah,
you
he
go.
did it.
Okay. But she's been, you know, she actually is from America and she's been living in Iceland for a little bit over a decade. She's married to a gentleman from Iceland. So let's remember as we begin this discussion with Amanda Jo, I want to just reiterate that she is going to talk about her experiences as a resident of Grindavik, and she is just one of many people from that area. So what she says, her perceptions of things, um, her recollections, that doesn't reflect the community as a whole. But because she's such an integral part of our team, I thought it would be fun for us to talk to her first and get her story, if you will, or her the information she can share with us, because I think giving us a sense of what took place there
Mm.
would be really helpful. So let's start, maybe Amanda Jo, with just you're an American living in Iceland. What's your overall impression of the country at this point after having lived there for 10 years or so now?
Um, I I really love it here. This is home for me. I just all the nature, all the open space, the fact that you can go outside and feel safe and yeah, it's peaceful.
You found the
It's
people to be really welcoming and open, or
yeah, for the most part. I mean, you always have that one person or that one group, but for the most part, everything's been just really comfortable and yeah, really nice. I really enjoy it here.
what's your favorite thing about living in Iceland so far? Like something you like the most? Could be like food,
Probably
could be whatever.
Probably the Northern Lights.
Oh yeah, they never get old.
No, never.
That's
I
awesome.
taught myself to photograph them. I can just go out for hours with the dogs and watch them. Just love it.
And then what about like your least favorite thing? The one where you're like, I could do without this little piece of Icelandic culture or whatever in the area.
Yeah, it's high cost of living. The housing market's a mess.
Yeah,
But I mean, you have those issues in every country, so
it's true. Yeah.
it's just kind of does the good outweigh the bad wherever you're at for you and go with it.
Yeah, just kind of like overall. So, and then
Yeah.
I think, most perplexing of all, and I've been to Iceland 4 times and it's a fantastic place and I love it too. But the language is so crazy. And I consider myself, I'm not fluent
Yeah.
in any language, but like I can, like Spanish and Latin based languages, I can usually like work my way through them. And I tried so hard to like get a little bit of Icelandic down and it's been so hard. So can you maybe talk a little bit about just your journey and like embracing the language and trying to become proficient?
It's not an easy language. Your pronunciation has come on really well, though, I have to
Well,
say.
I've tried really hard, and just real quick behind the scenes, Amanda Joe will sometimes send me. There'll be like a word, like a hill or a place near Grindavik, and she'll send me a little audio file pronouncing it, and then I have to practice it over and over to get it right. So go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted
Yeah.
you.
No, it's not an easy language. It's I also have issues with memory recall and stuff from a previous head injury, so that makes it a little more difficult for me. I definitely understand way more than I could speak because of that. But yeah, you take classes, you talk with people. I've done where I've wrote down what I've done for the day and then translated it. And you find that what you write in English is much more detailed than what you can actually translate to. But as you go, then, you start learning more words and more sentence structure, and you can put more together in your translations. And it just kind of helps to learn, how to speak conversationally when you can write down what you've actually done yourself.
Right.
It's
So,
just,
so
for me, it's been a good learning tool.
do people when you talk Icelandic with locals, like, can they tell you're not quite fluent, or are you good enough
Oh, they
now that
can
you pass?
definitely tell I'm not fluent. That's,
Right.
yeah, they can definitely tell that I'm not 100% fluent, but, you know, short conversations, public things like going to the store or the bank, things like that, I always get, oh, I thought you were Icelandic when it comes to,
Mm,
I get stuck and have to switch to English.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
for the most part, I have a really good community of people around me that sometimes they complain that they have to use English a little too much, but most most of the time people just speak Icelandic, and if I don't understand and I need to, I just ask.
Yeah. Well, and that's the nice thing is like, someone like me from the States or any tourist there is like, I'd say 80%, I don't know what the true number is of Icelandic people. Most of them speak English, like almost everyone does.
Yeah, pretty much everyone here speaks English, and yes, I mean you can get by no problem,
Yeah.
but it's nice to learn the language. I find it respectful when you go even just on vacation somewhere to at least learn a little bit and show a little bit of respect for the local area, the culture.
Yeah. And I think
You're
generally
visiting them.
I think generally they like to see people or at least making the effort. Like someone's Icelandic might not be very good, but in many cultures it's considered, a compliment that you're at least trying. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, and when you've been here, for over a decade, the lack of willingness to try, I think that's just, I don't think that's acceptable.
Right.
You need to at least try.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Well, now let's tell us a little bit about how long you lived in Grindavik. I don't, if I understand right, you weren't there the whole time, the whole 10 years you've been in Iceland. So tell us about how you got to that community, a little bit about the town, the people. Just give us a sense of place for this town that's been in the news so much over the past few months.
okay. Well, we bought our house in 2022 in Grindavik. Same year we got married. We had been living in Reykjavik, and it's just, we're country people.
Yeah, too much
And
hustle and bustle. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't like neighbors. I don't like being able to come home and just do what I want and have to worry about hours, or I need to sleep and people are being too loud in, apartment buildings or whatever. And I like animals. So, and it's really difficult in Reykjavik to have pets unless you own. And
Right.
even if you own an apartment, some apartment buildings you still can't have a pet in.
Yeah, you wanted something with a yard. You wanted a place for
Yeah,
the
I needed,
dogs. Yeah.
I've got dogs, I've got cats, I've got a husband. I needed a garden.
Yeah, you needed more space. So that was the
Yeah.
primary thing that kind of drew you there. And then once you got there, tell us a little bit
Yeah, well,
about like,
we have a lot of friends that had already lived there too.
okay,
They were already living there, and so for us going in, it was like moving in with a ready-made family, a ready-made community. We already had contacts, and we already spent time in Grindavik. We knew the town, we knew people there,
right.
and it was outside of Reykjavik, but Reykjavik was still accessible.
Yeah, it's a good
So
distance. It's
for us,
like
that
it's like
was
45-minute drive, maybe hour drive, I guess, something like that.
half hour, 45 minutes, depending on weather.
Yeah,
So
right. So yeah, so you're in Grindavik, of course, and let's maybe now kind of move to the this last fall, which is obviously when this town really became known to so many people around the world. When did people in Grindavik become aware? Obviously, there were the eruptions in 2021, 22, 23 near Fagradalsfjall, but like what was it like in the fall, and when did people become aware things were something different was happening?
I'm not sure when everybody became like I would say everybody knew for certain that, something was expected the first week of November because we had had like our first meeting for, the current events that had started. I knew on October 25th when the earthquake started picking up, but that's because I had already started studying this stuff on my own. And I recognized the trend in the data, the change in earthquake activity, the concentration of the quakes. For me, I was just like, yep, we're looking at something and probably soon.
Right. So when did that?
And then
When did you become interested in like the geology and that? Was that something that was kind of brewing the whole time you were in Iceland, or?
I've always been like, I'm an outdoor person. I enjoy, like, I just feel more comfortable in nature. I, so I've always had an interest in like, why is some of this dirt red when the rest of it's really dark brown? Or, why does this rock look like this, but 2 meters away, it's a completely different looking rock surface. Like for me, that was just always, something I had a curiosity about. And then when the volcanoes started going off, I just fixated on it and just did my own research and
Yeah, just picked up what
read
you
all,
could. Yeah.
yeah, just learned how to read all the data and the meters and stuff as best I could. And then I met you and I let you shape the information into a full understanding.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you definitely knew a lot, and you were a quick study in terms of just like taking in information. So when that was all happening in like let's say late October in Grindavik, obviously there was information being sent out. I'm assuming to like the community. How does it work in Iceland in terms of transmitting the scientific information out to the community? Do people have to go to the Met Office page, or like what are the outlets like there?
Well, there's different ways to get the information. I mean, obviously the newspapers, the Met Office site. For anybody that likes to dig deeper, you can find information on University of Iceland's website, different places like that. Um, our town has a Facebook page that they give out information on. We also have a web page for our town that we can get updates and information on. So, like when they called out for the first meeting, that took place literally across from my house at the sports center.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody in town interested in coming, came. Those that couldn't get off work or, with kids, it was streamed online so they could watch it through Facebook link or media link. And we would get all the information. And up through November 10th, I feel that they did a good job of keeping us informed.
Right.
In some cases, I was a little more frustrated because I was looking for more information, but the information I was looking for wasn't really necessary to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, you were trying to get the deep science from
Yeah,
them,
I
and
was going for the deep dive, but that wasn't the priority of information that needed to come out.
yeah. So what were the public officials saying like during those kind of like late October, early November dates? Was there a lot of clear communication from like the government and other officials, or was it conflicting? What was the sense of that?
I I really don't know. I don't recall there being any conflicting information. Maybe others saw it that way, but I tended to know what information I was looking for and what made sense.
Hmm.
So I would just look at certain places. I didn't need to go through, every single newspaper and every single article. I knew what information made sense, looked for the updates. Um, Maybe for others, they may have felt that information was incomplete or maybe wasn't given out in a good order. I mean, that would be for each person themselves to say.
Yeah.
I felt at first, like, because we had already had these meetings before with the previous eruptions. There had been eruptions in Fagradell's field after we had moved into Grindavik. So we had had these meetings before. And for me at first, like, even though I knew they were expecting something and I knew the location had changed, it was just another, okay, we're going to go over here. We're going to hear what they have to say. Like, and I wasn't really nervous, scared. I was just, all right, where's it move to now?
Yeah.
What do we do next?
Did it feel like the same kind of meeting, or did it feel like it was in different tone or flavor because they thought it could be
It was
closer to town?
definitely a different tone because the power plant area was involved.
Mm,
And that doesn't just affect Grindavik, that affects the entire peninsula. You've got 30,000 people approximately living on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Svartsengi goes under. I mean, we saw it just with a couple of lines getting taken out by lava.
right.
It affects every house, every business, every single person. So there was definitely, you definitely felt that with different officials that came in for that first meeting versus them not really being there when it was, in an uninhabited area that it was erupting.
And when did you like? So these earthquakes are happening. I'm assuming you felt them. Did they? Were you super worried? Did they produce a lot of panic in the community? Do you think, or is it were people rolling with the punches and somewhat tolerant of all the seismic activity?
That I would say is 50-50. Like for the most part, if you live in Iceland, you know what an earthquake feels like. And you're just like, yeah, oh, earthquake. But at the same time, you know, I have one friend, the earthquakes really bother her. They cause anxiety in her. And so when earthquake activity picks up, it's really uncomfortable for her.
Hmm.
But then for me, on the other hand, I can feel a zero point 0.7 magnitude that's just centered a couple miles away. And I'll say earthquake just because I feel it. Nobody else feels it, but it doesn't bother me.
Right. So you weren't
Like,
super alarmed by the earthquakes. I mean, they were probably like a nuisance and a background thing that was happening, but like you didn't
I
feel
was more
like,
upset. Like, I wasn't upset by the earthquakes personally. I was just upset that my pets were aggravated.
mm,
I had two dogs with anxiety, a puppy that was picking up on their anxiety, three cats running around,
right. So
one irritated he could no longer go outside. And
yeah, you were trying to like manage the chaos in the house with the pets.
yeah, like for me, like I never felt any fear with earthquakes until November 10th.
Yeah. So
And that was a whole new beast.
yeah, so let's talk about that because I think if people don't know the whole story, like through late October going into early November, the earthquake started picking up. The ground deformation, both with the GPS and the INSAR, showed that everything sort of accelerated leading up until November 10th. I think November 10th was the date that the public officials put out a state of emergency that was issued. And there was like a magnitude 5.2 very close to town. That might have been the biggest in the series. And there was damage occurring at this point. So this November 10th, if there was a turning point in Iceland and maybe Grindavik's history, the line in the sand in my mind would be November 10th. So walk us through some of that experience on that day.
Well, for me, like the activity picked up slowly throughout the day and then just got, consistent around, I'd say it was around 6 p.m. It got to the point that we were getting the large quakes back to back, and they were just getting steadily bigger up to 4 mag. Like I remember my husband called me at 2 o'clock when he got off work. He was on his way home, and he's like, "Yeah, I saw in the paper there's been more earthquakes at home today. Are how's it going?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's been, just a little bit of earthquake activity going on." And I just kind of laughed, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Dude, the whole town hasn't stopped shaking today. Like we're just in a bouncy castle, a very noisy one. Earthquakes are loud." And so when he got home, we had a wedding to go to the next day. We had the hen party the weekend before. We stayed in town for that so that everybody with their kids, felt safer being close by. So he come home, we went and got a wedding gift at the local flower shop, went to the store, talked to people, went home, ate dinner, and at that point, I had already known kind of around 12 o'clock. I was like, okay, something's going on here. Time to put the evacuation kit that I had ready, time to just put that in the car. So by 1 o'clock, I had already had the car packed, all the cat carriers out and ready to go, all the dog stuff out and ready to go. Like I just, gut instinct said, tonight or tomorrow morning, we're out of here.
Had you been notified by the city or anyone that said, residents, be ready and here's what we want you to do? Was there a clear procedure in place, or was it just get out of
Yeah,
town
we
and
had no, we had updates. We had updates prior to November 10th of if we needed to evacuate town, which direction to go, which roads to take, like we had clear evacuation plan with maps. Like
Mhm.
everybody knew and we already had everybody had signs printed out or written up to put in their window, that they had left the house and everything. Like the town was prepared for evacuation well in advance. We knew that the possibility was there. We maybe didn't think we had to do it, but we knew that they considered a possibility. So it was just, like the evacuation went really smoothly. We had yeah, like an assistance team. I can't think of the English word right now, in the sports center across from my house. So anybody that needed help with getting out or needed a ride getting out if they didn't drive or anything like that could go in there and get information. At one point while we were packing the car, like packing up my husband's car and hooking up the camper and everything, I just wandered across the street to talk to a friend of mine in the fire department. Just chill as could be. At one point the police stopped by. "Where are you headed when you leave town?" "Okay, best to go this direction." "No, you don't need to be in a hurry. It's just take your time and go."
So it
It,
seems like there was a sense of, I mean, like if this was in America, there would be pandemonium, but it seemed like it was pretty calm and measured, and everyone was kind of like,
no, I
well,
mean, of course,
yeah,
everybody was scared and everybody, when you're in the middle of just like, I remember thinking to myself, is this must be what an a small scale, like what it would be like to be in a war zone.
yeah.
Because earthquakes are loud. You hear them coming. And when you're inside, that's amplified. And for
Well,
anybody that would have had like a basement apartment, they're really hearing those earthquakes come in.
right.
So, I mean, you're constantly hearing this noise, and then you're hearing everything in your house shake. You're hearing, you know, just this constant barrage of noise, this constant heavy shaking. At one point, we had went out to drive around before we even started, okay, we're going to leave. We had put the cats in the crates, the dogs, put them all in the car and just went for a drive because you don't feel them as much in a car,
Yeah.
we thought. And like a lot of people did that. A lot of people went, drove around with their kids or, just to get out of the buildings.
Yeah, because it was just more nerve-wracking to be in the building dealing with them than just kind of driving
Yeah, I mean,
around.
we had, for like nothing in our house actually fell over, which I thought was surprising given in previous, eruption swarms and stuff. We lost a glass cabinet and different things, but this time nothing, we didn't really lose anything damage-wise in the house to the quakes. But, you see the lights swinging and you hear everything rattling in the cupboards and it's just, it's not comfortable.
Was there any worry that, like, I mean, not just you, but just the community in general, that at any point the earthquakes would also be accompanied by by eruptions? Like, or did they think it was just probably going to be all earthquakes? What was that? Was there information
I
communicated or?
think there was don't quote me on this because I'm just trying to recall, but I think there was with one of the announcements because I know our police chief he had done, you know, TV announcement at one point l later in the evening, I think after 9 o'clock, even later than that. And the possibility of eruption was put out there. It was considered if it did erupt, it would be at Sundnukskigurd. Um, but the main focus was just, it wasn't an emergency evacuation, but everyone needed to leave town for safety. And that was just the main focus was make sure everybody got out of town safe and go from there, the next morning.
So the whole town gets evacuated for the most part on that night of the 10th, right?
Oh, the whole town was evacuated that night, the entire
Yeah.
town.
So I'm
Everybody
wondering,
was out of town by midnight.
so like when you left town that night, were you like what was going through your head? Like was there the thought that maybe we won't see our house again or like this could be it or was it not maybe that dramatic in your mind? Like what was sort of the mindset?
Well, I don't know. I was kind of like at one point I had started to panic because while we were out driving around, we stopped and were talking to friends, and we had, a particularly large quake hit, and we watched everything fall off the shelves in the grocery store and people come running out. And then we saw the earth just kind of move like an ocean wave, which you later explained to me why that had happened. And that was the point that I told my husband, all right, get your ass in the car. It's time to go.
Yeah,
We're,
right.
there's something serious is going on here. Better safe than sorry. And I had started to panic a little then because I had, six animals with me and they are my life. So for me, it was just like, I have to get out of here before something happens to them.
Right. So
And
you
then,
were kind of in protective mode. You probably weren't internalizing it as
yeah,
much,
I,
maybe.
I was still panicking some, but as I left town, you know, like, well, first when we went to leave, he said, yeah, I need to put air on one of the camper tires. And I'm like, all right, let's go. I'll follow you. We'll stick together. So we drove down to the station that had the air pump. And to get there, we drove across the crack that formed at the church, which is just, meters from my front door.
And at this point, the crack's
And
probably narrow, right? Like just a few
I didn't
centimeters, or
notice anything.
yeah.
I didn't notice anything. And we got down there and he's putting air in the tire and he came over to my car window and he said, I think I forgot to lock the back door. He said, we need to go back and lock that, insurance purposes if anybody comes in, whatever. And I was like, all right, I'll follow you back up that way and we'll just go out of town that way. And so we drove back across where the crack formed. And like the road looked fine then. But, once we got out of town after that, I had gotten a notification that the road had broke up at my house. And for me, that's when I started to think, surely my house has to be damaged beyond repair.
Right, because it
And
was so
that was,
close. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was just right there, I mean, I can still go to my house, stand and look out the window and see where the ground has completely changed beyond where they fixed the road. It's just, kids used to play in that area. There was a playground and from sunup to sundown there were kids out there. And
Yeah, it's almost the town center kind of. If there was a town square, central intersection in town. I mean, I've been through that town. That's pretty much where
yeah,
you
that's
would
pretty
put it.
much it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So like for me to get that information that, the road had broken up at our house and not knowing exactly where this crack is and, how big it is and did anything fall into it. Like we had no information other than there's this crack by our house. And of course, we didn't get any further information until daylight came and there was drone footage and media footage. And then, we're trying, to find the biggest screen we can to watch this on to see, okay, there's our house, there's the crack. Is there anything coming off of this? Does our house look damaged? Just trying to see anything. And yeah, for us, that was, I think, the worst part of that first night,
Just
other
not
than,
knowing. Yeah,
yeah, like, I mean, we had no idea. So
yeah.
yeah, that was a pretty nerve-wracking experience.
No, I can't even imagine. I mean, because thousands of miles away, and I'm like watching November 10th go down, and I'm like, holy cow, this is. insane. And at that point, I mean, even I think even I titled a video like "Eruption Imminent." Like it looked like geologically, for all the world, like these earthquakes were breaking the rock as the magma was pushing upwards, and the next thing, the big climax or finale to this thing was going to be an eruption.
Yeah, and my thought when I looked back at the data, a couple of days later when things had calmed down, was should have erupted in town.
Yeah,
Just the way, because I mean, town is where the magma dike ended, maybe a little bit further out. And from what I could tell, if I remember right, the more shallow of the quakes at that time were in town, which would have
yeah,
been indicative of magma rising in that location in my mind.
yeah. I think the magma got as close as like a half a kilometer to the surface.
Yeah,
I don't know if they ever
it got
determined
just a,
where, but
I think it was, I think they said 500 to 800 meters below,
right. But
so less
what?
than a
But what?
kilometer.
But where was? Yeah. So where was that 5 to 800 kilometer depth? Was it under the town or was it further north? I never heard exactly,
I'm
but
gonna be honest, I remember hearing, but I can't accurately
right,
recall that information, so I don't want to say and then be completely wrong because I remember wrong.
right. So then
But
after, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that was definitely like the if there was a climax to the whole thing, I suppose it was definitely that day, the most dramatic day. That's maybe what I want to say there. Then
yeah,
after a
it
few
was,
days, they let you guys back in, like residents. Is that
yeah,
maybe
it
talk us through
was,
that a little bit?
it was scattered, it was chaotic, it was difficult to get information. There's a, I have mixed feelings on it personally. I agree they did the right thing safety wise to assess everything, but I don't think they did all of the proper assessments. Um, that's just my personal opinion. I know there's others that feel the same, but I also know that there's, another group of people that have completely different opinion on it.
Sure. Yeah, opinions are going to vary. What did you see
But I
when
mean,
you went back into your town or to your house? Like what did you see at your house or around your house as you drove back in that first time after being away a few days?
well, the first trip back in, we had to meet at a meeting point. Like we were given times that we could go into town, and like we had a time limit. At first, people were being like shuttled in by search and rescue and, like volunteer safety crews who would go with them to their house. You could just take a bag. For the day that we got to go in and the time we got to go in, we got lucky and we were able to take our car in. And, we weren't then limited to just one of us going, in a safety vehicle and getting one bag. We got really lucky that we could take the car in the group that we were in going through. Um, so we could fill the car. And, I didn't have to wait or he didn't have to wait at the safety post while the other one went. And so we came into town from the south coast, from the Fagradalsfjord side. And like we were able to drive up Oystervegger going from that side toward the crack into our house. And I just remember, like the road was just tore up. And, you could see like you've been through there, that was basically a flat street.
Yeah, I remember. I think you sent me a video of it of you guys
Yeah,
driving through
it
there.
went flat and then up, and it was almost like you could see where that second graben was starting to form, the edge of it, but it hadn't really opened yet. And of course, at the time, I didn't know that there was, the chance that that area would sink. So, we just literally, it was almost like we just drove up a hill onto this horse that I had no idea was forming.
Yeah,
Because at the time, like, I hadn't really taught myself or looked at that, within the perspective of the town. And then we got, to our house and, we couldn't drive out of our street then because of this big ass hole, and everything was fenced off there. And like we tried to go into, when we went to go into the house, we had to like force the door open.
oh, so it was sticky, like just opening the door
Yeah,
was,
it
yeah,
was,
okay.
yeah. And like our first thought was, oh, great, the frame's twisted. And, so
Yeah,
like, and just kind of, I don't know, it was kind of surreal because it's like you don't think about having to be give permission to go home.
Yeah, like it's a
You know,
totally different, yeah, alternate reality.
yeah, like, normally when you leave your house, you're going to go grocery shopping or to visit friends or to go to work or, just to do something and then you're coming home. We left on the 10th and we had to wait to be told, yeah, you can go home now. And then when you get there, you can only stay for so long. And you kind of look at your house in a whole new way.
Yeah, did you feel
It's
kind of
just
detached a little bit? Like it was like, did it feel like it wasn't your house at that point? Like familiar, but like not? Like what was the sense there?
mm, for me, no, it was more anger
Mm,
because like we had bought this house, we planned to grow there. We had plans for renovations for the land, the house. Like we knew what we wanted to do with it, and we intended to retire in this house. This was going to be home. And so I was more angry than anything
right.
that, one, we had no idea at that time was our house damaged beyond repair. Two, we had no idea when were we going to be allowed to go home and live again. And then three, I couldn't just decide when I wanted to go to my house. So for me, it was just anger. And then the sadness hit because I can't just go home.
Right. Yeah, that would have been
But
really
for the
hard.
longest time, we had intended to move back. Like we were determined. We were going to go back. And then on January 14th, when the fissure opened up at the beginning of town, and, up to that point, we'd had, subsequent quakes, subsequent eruptions, and, more Sigdal, like sinkhole
Yeah,
areas had
the
formed.
collapse
And
areas.
yeah, collapse areas. Yeah. I'm so used to the Icelandic terms, I
Yeah.
can't really translate them now. And so we're seeing more of the subsidence in the land and the rising, you know, on either side of the grabens. And I I remember I think I sent you a message and was like, yeah, this isn't good, is it? And like this is no longer safe.
Yeah, that was
And
the most terrifying one for sure because it was so close.
yeah, and I mean, we watched, you know, houses burn. Just sorry.
No, it's okay. Take your time.
These are people you talk to in town, friends, people you know, acquaintances for others, family and, dear close friends for many. And, it wasn't just the fact that they lost their houses to a volcano, but the entire world saw it.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So, I mean, come the 14th, like we realized the situation had changed.
So it
And,
felt
I
like at that
remember,
point, like, yeah, that was kind of like the deal breaker for you, maybe.
yeah, and, and after that live stream, you had talked with me, still on chat and stuff. And, like you've always been so supportive in answering questions and, kind of keeping me straight to look at this, you know, from a data-driven point to understand it and not just take emotional decisions, but, you know, decisions that are actually helpful. And, so to go from that day watching all of that to, within the next couple of days, we're having a meeting in Reykjavik for the town. And at this point, everybody that's at that meeting is going, buy us out.
Yeah.
And, at that point, that's where we were at too.
So it's kind
It
of
was
like
just,
after
okay,
January 14th, the writing was on the wall. Everyone realized that getting the town back the way it was before was unlikely, and they
yeah.
were all just kind of ready to move on.
And I think for me, that was the day too that I realized there were surveys and things like geodetic surveys and, all these other land surveys that they should have started November 10th. Well, November 11th. You know, we had lost a man needlessly
Right.
because it was insisted that this opening, this, fissure be filled in at a house.
Yeah, they put
And
workers in those dangerous places.
and
Yeah.
th they had done this with no notion of what lay beneath. And, I don't have knowledge of how all of these survey tools work, but I know the data they can give us, and I know that that would have been very helpful.
Sure. Right.
That would have maybe opened someone's eyes and said, no, this is not an area that you're going to fix.
Yeah.
This is a cordoned off danger zone. Leave it alone. And I think that too is part of what made the decision for us is that every time we go to town, we don't know when we step, when we put our foot on the ground somewhere, if we're going to go through.
Yeah.
And that's
Just,
always in
yeah.
the back of your mind when you're there. Like even when I go with Gilfie, even though I get the maps, I get the hazard maps, I get the maps of the town from the Met Office and from the meetings that, you necessarily don't see in the news. I have this information, but it's not complete.
Yeah. It's just the
So
unknown.
yeah, it really is. So, like even when I'm in town with Gilfie doing, filming with the drone, or if I'm just going home, like my dogs, they don't get out of the car now unless they're on a leash. And it's only in specific areas that I let them out on leash because it's areas that I know are okay.
Yeah. So hard. I mean, yeah, it's just, it wasn't safe anymore. So yeah,
No.
it's so hard. It's so,
So
yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, so, like between the information that you were able to give me, the information that I'm able to source from here, I sent you a message. We're buying a house somewhere else. Is it geologically safe here? And
Yeah.
you
I
you
gave it
spent
my,
like two
I gave it
days
my
checking out
blessing.
a
Yeah.
couple of yeah, you spent 2 days checking out, two towns that I told you about. And
Yeah.
like you really took the time to go through that for me, which my husband and I both deeply appreciate. Like for us, that was just
No, that
to
was the least
have
I could do.
someone who knew what they were looking at take a look at it and say, okay, this is the type of geological area you're going to be living in if you buy here.
Yeah.
That was just a huge peace of mind.
Yeah, and realizing you're in Iceland, so like what, there's places though that are less risky than others for sure. And I think the new town you're gonna settle in, like it. I think you guys are gonna be happy there. I think it's gonna work out great.
Yeah. And for us, we had talked about, a couple of other places on the peninsula before the December 8th eruption happened. And I told Omar, I said, yeah, not for me. If we're not going to stay in Grindavik, I don't want the stress anymore. I don't want to have to deal with, are we going to lose water? Are we going to lose heat? We're going to lose electricity,
Yeah.
and then December 8th happened and we had already decided on the new area. And I just kind of looked at him, I was like, I told you so.
Validation, right?
Yeah. And I was
That's
just like,
good.
because something in me knew, like this isn't over and something else is going to happen.
Yeah, and we're still like at the very beginning probably of this whole cycle. So crazy. But well, I
Yeah.
I just
I'm content to watch it from a further distance than being in the middle of it.
yeah, you'll chime into the news and not have it be right under your house or whatever. So, well, thanks so much for being so like open and real and giving us a real. I feel like I could tell just with you talking there was definitely like the emotion and the power of your words. I think were important there. I want people to feel that that this wasn't just an event on the news and people that volcano lovers were watching, but there was people impacted by all this geology that was taking place.
Yeah. I mean, and there's, the decision to stay or go, that's on each individual person, each individual family and business. And I don't think that should be judged by anyone because we have the right to make our own choices.
Right.
And and I think if there was one thing I would want to impress upon everybody watching, it's that it's not just a cool geological event that's taken place. Just like what happened in Hawaii, this has affected our entire lives. And like yeah, it's cool to see a volcano. It's cool to be able to get up close. But when you're coming to the area now on vacation or whatever, keep in mind that, you know, this isn't a tourist site. This is something that has impacted an entire community, an entire way of life. And just have a little bit of respect about it. We there's not supposed to be tourists in town. The town is open for residents and businesses, but the average person coming into town that has no knowledge of the ground going through town, they're putting themselves at risk. They're disrespecting the people that need to be there to take care of, cleaning out their houses, moving, just whatever goes along with this whole buying process, all of that.
Hmm.
And they're also putting our search and rescue crews at risk if something happens to them. Just
Yeah.
don't be that person.
Yeah, that's an important message. I mean, it's just perfectly stated there that, and I tried to as best I could convey that to people that while I was excited as a geologist to watch all these things happen and it was science in action, like I'd been in that community and like there were people's homes and the same in Hawaii in 2018. And I think that's the perspective we need to always make sure we maintain is that, um, put yourself in their shoes, put yourself as if you lived in that community and then behave responsibly. And hopefully
Yeah, to
we
be
see
in
more of that.
town and see tourists getting out of the car and, especially up where the lava flowed into town, just don't be that person. Have a
Yeah,
little bit of respect. Not to mention, you have no idea what the ground is like in that area.
right.
You have no idea what you're walking on.
Yeah, and search and
Don't
rescue
put,
has enough to
yeah,
do than yeah,
our search and rescue team, they've been dealing with this for years. They're exhausted.
yeah,
Give them a peace of mind that they don't have to worry about your dumb ass coming in
yeah.
and putting yourself and them at risk for an Instagram photo. It's not worth it.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, do you feel ready to handle a few questions, Amanda? Is that okay if we?
Yeah, if we touch
Okay.
on something I don't want to talk about, I'll just say pass.
Okay. And I know a few. I know a little bit about you, so I think I can maybe help screen that a little bit too. But let's see. Susan's got some pages here. Just to make sure I don't screw up the technology again, I'll just read them out if that's okay. Um, and I want to start with you. There may be some geology themed ones from the first part of the update, but I
Yeah,
think I
that's
want to.
all you. You're the expert
Well, but
there.
I want to. I really want to stick. Let's while we have both of us on the screen before I screw it up. Um, let's just stick with this for now. So let's see here. This is mostly. All right, I'm going to skip the first page because it's mostly from the beginning of the episode, and let's go to. I'm assuming we've got some other questions here on the second page. Um,
Hi, puppy dog.
okay.
Hi.
Let's see. Let's find one here. Yeah, there's just a lot of trying to sift through them here. Finding a good one for you. Okay, to Mandy Joe. This is from Kate Clover. Were you in Grindavik during the 2021 earthquake swarms prior to that eruption? How did those quakes feel compared to those associated with the recent events in Grindavik?
I actually had already answered that one on the chat. I wasn't
Okay,
living there then, but I had been in town, visiting friends and stuff, and had felt them, and there's just no comparison.
right.
Nothing compares to what we experienced on the 10th.
Yeah, I think, and I'd have to look at the data, but I think the quakes were bigger in magnitude. I think there was more of them, and they were
Mhm.
closer to your the town, and so that totally makes
Yeah, on
sense.
November 10th, we had a lot of those big quakes centered in the town.
Yeah, right under your house, basically.
It, there was one that went off under my house
Yeah,
according to the maps. So,
it's
yeah, I
crazy.
mean, for us, everybody in town, we were literally standing on top of active earthquakes.
Yeah,
So anything we felt coming from the Fagradalsfjall area, there's just no comparison.
yeah, and really, there's probably been some instances of this happening somewhere else in the world similarly, but at least in modern times, my brain's not coming up with a comparison just like this, with just the earthquake swarm, the threat of the volcanic activity, and like a town really like in the crosshairs like that. It was just really unprecedented, just so
Heimaey,
crazy. Yeah,
Heimaey
Jaime. Yeah,
Investment
that's
Heimaey
true.
was, I mean, they went through much worse than, in my mind, they went through much worse than we did because
Yeah,
they
the lava came
were
into town.
literally running for their lives from lava.
Yeah, and they were on an island,
Yeah.
which
So,
isn't
I
good.
mean, in my mind, what they experienced was definitely much worse.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
it's so
experience is
insane.
also subjective. So
Right. Yeah, compared to what you're used to. So, okay, let me scroll through these real quick. Sorry. We'll hit you with a couple more and then we'll let you get off the um lots of
Joko, låt han i
lots of
frihet.
geology
Ja,
stuff here.
nej, låt han i frihet. Nej, shh, Joko.
Oh, here's a question for you. Have you emptied your house or hope to move back? All the best wishes for your future.
Our house is mostly emptied. We do have to, when we sell, have everything out, have the house cleaned, all the trash off the property, the same as you would if you're selling to an individual buyer. So we're actually going back to Grindavik on Friday, if it's safe to do so, to start taking care of all of that.
Hmm. Okay.
But yeah, so we're not quite done with the house yet. We have to take out any, trash or anything that's still there, clean up the garden, clean, like literally clean the house and all of that.
Right. Yeah, just kind of make those last preparations.
Yeah, basically make the house ready for sale, the same as if we were just selling it on our own to, the guy next door.
Yeah. Well, and it's we don't have to talk about this, but to me, it's a weird process too because normally you sell a house. Usually you make the decision like I'm selling my house for whatever reason. Right? We're moving, we're getting a smaller house, we're getting a bigger house, whatever. But usually that's a voluntary decision. Um,
Yeah.
and then you sell it to someone, right? You sell it to another buyer, and maybe you drive by that house a year later and you see kids in the yard and you see the family. And this is a very different experience where you're selling it to the government and we don't know and we no one has any idea what that house will look like in a year. Will it even be there and what will be done with
No,
it? And that's so
it
crazy.
is different because like when we moved to Grindavik, we sold a house we had in Reykjavik. It was a upstairs, downstairs house, so like shared
Mhm.
property. And, we saw the people we were selling the house to face to face.
Yeah.
We met with them for signing the papers and, when they came to look at the house and, like it was a personal experience.
Yeah.
This is just all bureaucratic paperwork. So
Yeah,
it's
and just walking
the
away with
cleaning it and everything just feels so
empty.
much more invasive to have
Yeah.
to do this. Like, I don't know. It's like when you're selling it to someone that you've met and you've shook their hand, you're like, yeah, I don't want them coming in and think I'm a disgusting person. I want this clean. And now it's just like, you just don't care. They're telling us the town is dangerous. We shouldn't be there, but we need to go there to clean our house.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Like, it just feels like mixed messaging.
Sheesh. Boy. Let's see. Here's another one. Maybe one more. There's most of these are geology ones, so but here's one from Susan S. For Mandy Joe. She mentioned once that the village used to be located on the promontory next to the harbor. When and why was it moved?
I don't remember the exact um, date to when it was moved. Um, yeah, I don't remember exactly when it was moved, but I believe the reason it was moved was, you know, the harbor area that's currently used is bigger.
Hmm.
Um, it was a little bit safer to come into, although when that harbor first started being used, you can find videos on YouTube, insane amount of waves that those ships had to come through to get in there.
Oh, I
They did
bet.
redesign the harbor some to make it safer.
Yeah, I think they have more jetties
But
sticking
of
out
course,
to
too,
break up the waves, right? Does that
yeah,
sound okay?
yeah, they had to. It was extremely, it's insane to see the videos of the ships coming in there,
Yeah.
when it was before they did that. But like, I mean, even with town growth, that Hoopsnez is a very small area.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't fit, the entire population of Grindavik into that area today. So, I mean, just over time, the settlement grows,
It had to
more
spread,
people
yeah.
come in, the fishing industry grew, they started processing fish. We have all these fishing fleets in there. Just as the town grew up from just the fishermen being there and maybe, their families to full-fledged business area, you need space.
Yeah, so just kind of urban
So,
sprawl on a smaller scale, on a Grindavik
yeah,
scale,
and
yeah.
I had posted a link in the chat for that question on history of like the Grindavik area. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it in English, so it does have to be Google translated,
Right.
but it gives an idea of the area and when it was settled and the outlying area that's considered a part of it.
Yeah, and
So people can
it's the
scroll
way
back
I
through them.
understand it, it's been in like the one of the most important locations on the whole south coast because it's the only safe harbor on the south coast for the
Yeah,
most part.
I mean, for the most part, it is the only harbor there. And I mean, like how do I want to say it? Welcome to brain damage. Um, like with the fishing industry and everything, it's one of the biggest contributors to the Icelandic society.
Right.
The amount of money that comes through with fishing, fish processing, export, everything that goes along with just having a fishing industry in one town that puts a lot of money into the country. And, Grindavik is a fishing village, and it's something that, you know, the town takes pride in, and rightly so. I mean, the
Yeah, that's
majority
their
of the fishermen that
heritage.
work there are
Right.
from yeah, and the majority of the fishermen that work there are from Grindavik. The majority of the people that work in these processing plants are from Grindavik, or maybe grew up in Grindavik, moved to Keflavik or surrounding area, but still come back there to work.
Yeah.
You always have people that aren't from there that work there, as you do with any job in any city, but the majority of the fishing industry is Grindavik and is Grindavik's residents. So yeah,
Yeah, the town's so intricately tied to that. That's like its chief purpose and why it was settled. So, yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, as far as like fishing towns in Iceland, it is one of the strongest in the economy.
Mhm.
We have Siglufjörður in the north. I lived there for a couple of years. A lot of fishing up there, a lot to do during the herring boom and everything. And that did eventually die down and, population grew and reduced with that around there. But there's not, every harbor doesn't have this, huge industry within the fishing community around it. Some harbors are, for cargo ships, freight ships, all of that. The genuine full-fledged fishing harbors are very limited.
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. Are you good for a
And
couple
I
more
promised you
questions?
I would bring,
Oh, there it is. That's the big one then?
yeah, well, no, this is the one I had showed you. The other ones are
Oh,
still in the
okay.
car.
Yes.
But this was
Do you want to
from
tell the
January
viewers?
14th.
Yeah, tell the viewers what they're looking at there.
Yeah, I think that's your job as the geologist.
No, you're the geologist now. That's your baby rock. You got your
Yeah,
baby
this is
rock.
my
You
baby.
gotta tell us about your baby.
Yeah, this came from the flow into Grindavik. I got this on my first trip with Gilvy when
Hmm.
we went to do some filming. And this is from the flow that came into town. Um, for me, living in Grindavik and everything, I needed to see with my own eyes.
Right.
Like that was just I needed to do that.
Just to
So
process.
yeah, I think that's kind of what it was. Like I kept seeing the images on TV and I'm like, this is my town. And I needed to, yeah, yeah, you're right, just to process it. And this piece of lava was actually laying outside of the barrier that's set up where you shouldn't pass. And I kind of struggled with whether or not I should take it.
I think given what's happened to the Grindavik, you're due one rock. I feel like nature owes you one rock. So,
Yeah.
as a geologist, I'm giving you permission from the volcano gods to take the one rock. I think it's fine.
And then
Um,
I also have the I don't know if you can
oh, the
see it
tephra.
very clearly, the tephra.
Hmm.
This came from my own garden.
So that was February 8th event, correct? When it was,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I've got just a ton of this stuff.
Yeah, so that
And I
stuff
collected,
got thrown through the air and landed in your yard.
yeah, and it's really brittle and there's strands. I got a splinter from one of them. That got infected. That was fun.
Lava can be
But they're
sharp.
just, Yeah, I mean, it's very brittle. There's some, it just looks like hairs.
Crazy shapes. Yep. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
called
it's,
Pele's hairs or Pele's tears. I think there's a different name for them in Icelandic, but that's the Hawaiian name.
but I grabbed a container of this stuff for you for when you come
Oh, awesome. That's so cool.
because I figured you would want to look at it and analyze it.
Yeah, looking at that under a microscope, that's going to be great. So,
Yep. Well, you've got a whole container of it.
well, cool. Are you good for like one or two quick questions? I just found
Yeah,
one more
sure.
page. Okay, a couple more quick questions. I want to make sure we get the Amanda Joe stuff in for sure. So here's a quick question. Someone wants to know where in the U.S. you're from. Like just, I guess, what state?
Uh, just general area, Southwest Pennsylvania on the Mason-Dixon line.
Okay, there was an easy one. That was for Mary Szymanski. Um, Joanne Kellum wants to know, it's great to meet you, and did you knit your hat? It's beautiful.
It's crochet. I made it myself. There's also a matching scarf, a matching shawl, and fingerless gloves that I made to go with it.
And just so you know, I know Joanne's name because she knit me a hat that I wore in one of my recent videos.
Ah, okay.
So,
Yeah, I also do knitting. I do the crochet. I do cross stitch. I do embroidery. I sew, and I also do knitting, which is commonly known as Viking knitting. It's done with a bone needle,
oh wow,
but it has roots in history of being known to have been used well before Viking times. And I think the first example of it was found in ancient Egypt.
wow.
So
You
I,
just blew me away. I
yeah,
don't know anything about knitting. That's awesome.
all self-taught,
Um,
just something fun to do.
oh, Oscar M wants to know, you'll like this question. Did any of your animals exhibit unusual behavior before or during the events? I think you mentioned during they were freaked out, but like before, and did you
Um,
notice anything?
I have one dog. Her name is Panda. She actually on the 14th eruption that day, she yeah, that day she went to live with friends of ours. Um, she has a lot of anxiety problems, and throughout the whole experience, she was just a wreck, a ball of nerves.
Yeah.
And then, even after, because we're in industrial housing now until we can get into the new house and, get all that sorted. When the guys are working downstairs and closing garage doors and moving stuff around, it feels like earthquake in here. So she was just getting sick, not handling it. So the best thing for her, we basically rehomed her. Miss her like crazy, but I spent 4 years rehabilitating this dog, and she deserves to live her best life. So yeah,
Well, your fur
so I'm
babies
down one dog,
have a
but
great mama that's helping them out. So yeah, and I
yeah,
know
but
how much you love those animals.
as far as like alerting me to earthquakes incoming or anything like that, maybe a millisecond before I would hear some of them coming, one of the dogs would hear them because they have better hearing,
Yeah.
but there was never any well advanced warning. Like my
Hmm.
cat, if I have I call them stress seizures. I don't really know what they are, just where I kind of like space out or walk around in circles. I'll know up to 5 minutes before it happens that it's something's coming because he'll alert me to it because he's just weird. But like they never alerted me to like geological changes
Yeah.
in that same way.
Yeah.
Like I never noticed that, but
Yeah.
health changes they notice. So I don't think they have,
Yeah.
at least mine don't have that, you know, extra super sense that would be studied by scientists.
Well, and that's why it's not a, reliable method of any sort of prediction is it's erratic. Like some animal populations show something, others don't, and like it's not something that's been well
I
established.
do a
So,
lot of bird watching and stuff, and I don't even really recall there being much change in the bird activity on
hmm,
the 10th.
right. So things were pretty normal on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, if you weren't feeling the earthquakes, it would have just been another day.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
I don't feel that when it comes to earthquakes that, domesticated animals or even the local birds had any impact on us knowing
Yeah.
something different based on their behavior. I don't, yeah.
Hmm. Well, here's your last question, and thanks again for joining us, Amanda Joe. This is great. I know you're not one to be on the camera and stuff, but you're doing great. I think you've just been a great guest. So, all right, from Paul P. He wants to know, would it be too much to ask if there is an Instagram you're posting pictures and videos, if at all public and of course okay with you? if your answer is no, that of course a no is a valid answer. Thanks. So,
It's definitely no because I don't use Instagram.
oh, well, there you go. That was easy.
I hate it.
Yep.
I have my personal Facebook page, but I don't give
Yep.
that out. It's not under my real name
Right.
for obvious
Yes.
reasons.
Yeah, we respect your
And
privacy, so
yeah,
that's fine. So,
yeah, like, yeah, yeah, I don't like Instagram.
I will mention though, and you probably don't want me to, that Amanda Joe is an exceptional photographer. I don't
I'm not that good.
I, as someone who takes lousy pictures, like you take really good pictures, maybe not professional quality. That's for someone else to decide. But yeah, so if you ever do have a website or something with your pictures, there you go. Then there's people that would maybe
Well,
check those out.
maybe I'll send you a file of ones you can share if you want to share them.
That'd be great. So
Or as I'm working on the website, I'll put maybe some of mine from Eldorf and stuff up on the Iceland page
yeah,
for you.
that'd be perfect. So that'd be
You're
great.
more than welcome to
So
them.
awesome. Well, thanks so much again for joining us, Amanda Joe. Appreciate you giving us this perspective. We'll go ahead and I think what I'll do is set you free from the Zoom. Are you good with that?
That sounds great.
Okay, and then you can go back to running the live chat. I will try to get a couple more of these questions in. There's 3 pages here. Let me see if I can master this technologically on the backside. Um, okay, so there's me. Let's throw something up here just for fun. And okay, team, are we back to me and Google Earth? Does that look good? Hopefully. Okay, so let me grab a couple more questions from folks, and then we can wrap this up here soon. Again, we're pushing about 2 hours here. I don't want to make this too long. So let me just grab, I'm going to stay on this last page of questions, I suppose. Let's see. Okay, Scotty wants to know, is Iceland the only place that is so active, studied, and monitored globally? And why does the magma behavior under Iceland seem localized compared to the rest of the world? There's lots of places that are volcanically active that we study and look at to answer Scotty's question and monitor. I'm very familiar with Kilauea in Hawaii, so that's another really good example of a place that is heavily monitored and has fairly regular volcanic eruptions. And so that's one that comes to mind. And why does the magma behavior under Iceland seem localized compared to the rest of the world? It's the same in Hawaii. The eruptions are taking place in a specific little region. Um, it changes from time to time in terms of the eruptive vents and the location, but generally within the summit crater or on the flanks of that volcano is kind of where we see that. Hopefully that's a good answer to that. Let me grab a couple more here. Let's do just maybe 2 more because I know we're pushing the 2-hour mark. I promise I will go through the rest of these questions and try to maybe include a few of them in the next update that I might do here in a few days. Let's see. Brad and Denise want to know, how pliable is lava once cooled? Example, can it be excavated like the road they created in Grindavik? Once the lava is fairly well cooled off, I don't know what a good temperature would be there, but it obviously becomes more brittle and it's not pliable at all. If you go to some of the old videos I have on YouTube, there's even a video of me taking a scoop of lava on my rock hammer, putting it on the ground, but then picking it up with my hands with gloves, and I'm able to manipulate and shape the lava a little bit in that moment, but it quickly kind of solidifies, and it was still just barely glowing at that point. So once it's cooled, it's not pliable at all, I suppose is the way to answer that. Let's see, let's do 1 or 2 more. Just kind of scrolling through to find a good one that's not like a long-winded question. This probably is a long-winded question, but I'll do this one anyway. FT heading. Could one say that Grindavik town now is safe from eruption? Thanks. That answer I think is, well, I think that is a simple answer. That's no. We just had an eruption at the south end of this magma body on January 14th. There's still a good likelihood of a eruptive vent possibly opening up in the town itself. The town sits downhill of the known magma body and where the eruptive fissures have taken place. They have erected the berms, of course, around the perimeter of the town, but saying it's safe now from an eruption, I think we're nowhere out of the woods yet when it comes to that. Let's see. Yeah, someone's asking about the papers that I talked about with the sills. I'll make sure I put those in the comments once we get this live chat done. I'll try to get those in there. Maybe one more question here. A lot of good questions here, team. I appreciate you asking these questions. And in a normal episode without a guest, I would try to get to as many of these as I could. Let's see. Does basaltic lava, this is from Brian E., does basaltic lava have that red hot color while underground or only at the surface when it's been oxygenated? That's a really interesting question. I would assume, I'm sure the physicists in the group could probably chime on here, but I would assume, I guess it still is red hot in color. I don't think it's the oxygen that generates the color. I think it's the temperature. But I don't know 100% for sure. So that would be my take there. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Good question, Brian. Appreciate it. And I'll wrap up with this question. This is just a kind of a fun one. And I promise not to get on a soapbox on here. This is from Zuzana Alpanu Krebukova. How do you deal with imperial versus metric units being a geologist? Being a geologist in the U.S., in that sense, kind of sucks because you're sort of living in the imperial unit world of feet and miles, Fahrenheit, but you're taught, and everything you read, every scientific paper you read, whether it's US based or not, is in metric units. So you sort of adapt to using both, and you sort of also consider your audience and then use the units that you think will land best with that audience. So here on this, it's interesting because here on YouTube, I do have a lot of viewers from the US, but I do have a lot of viewers also from outside the US. And so I do try to use metric units and then add the English equivalent when I can. If I'm giving a talk, up the road here at the local Rotary Club, I would probably use exclusively imperial or English units. Yeah, so it's mainly just a matter of kind of like knowing who you're communicating to and then sort of adapting and using the correct units there. So yeah, great question there. Hopefully that helped a little bit. So, all right. I will look through all the live chat later. I will try to figure out the little technological issue we had there in the middle, but I appreciate your patience and dealing with that with me. That was just kind of crazy. Not sure exactly what happened. I'd need to figure out better how to use the Zoom OBS platform together more seamlessly. And I might reach out to our good friend Nick Zentner because I'm pretty sure that's what he uses for all his interviews. So I'll get a good sort of step-by-step procedure from him on exactly how he does that so I can learn better myself, right? It's okay to make mistakes. You just don't want to make the same ones over and over. That's the idea. I want to thank especially today Amanda Joe for being not just our moderator, but our great guest. I thought that was an amazing interview. I'm excited to kind of watch it again and listen again more carefully to everything she said. I thought it was great. The perspective she gave, that's exactly what I was hoping for, is that she would add a little bit of gravitas and humanity to what took place in Grindavik. I think it's easy, and I include myself in this, to become a little detached from the human aspect of it and just look at the data and the science and get excited when the lava's coming out of the ground. I know on January 14th, we did that with some trepidation because we knew how close it was to the town. So I definitely wanted to get her story. And I think it's great that we've now essentially with this video archived that story. This will exist for a long time for other people to look back and reflect upon this moment in time and this moment in Icelandic history. So thank you to her. Thank you also to Lisa R. and to Susan Helmer for being our amazing moderators, just doing all the great work they do in managing the live chat, aggregating the questions, helping me. As you can see, I need a lot of help. I really need one more person sitting next to me here that can run all the IT technological chaos that we have going on here. Then we might be a streamlined, semi-professional, legit organization. But for right now, at least for myself speaking, it's a bit of an amateur production. You get out of it what you pay for it, which take that what you will. We're just trying to do the best we can. But hopefully there's been some good content here, good information about the developing situation in Iceland. I will be recording another interview, but it will not be a live stream interview this Friday with Ariana Soldati, who's a volcanologist at North Carolina State University. So I'm excited to talk to her, learn more about her research. That type of format interview I've got pretty dialed in terms of the computer issues and technology. So I'm not expecting anything crazy there. That, as soon as I get that wrapped up with her, Friday morning my time, I'll get that packaged and uploaded. So look for that later in the day on Friday, if you're especially sort of US based, Western Hemisphere, or maybe Saturday morning if you're over in Europe. But thanks again to everyone who participated today. Thanks to all the great viewers, part of the team. Appreciate you and all that you do. And I will be with you soon. Until then, take care and enjoy. Appreciate you.